300 years ago, the world looked completely different. The production of all goods and services were local. Horses were the most efficient form of travel, and once the sun went down, your only source of light was from a candle. Nowadays, we have computers in our pockets. We can travel thousands of miles through the sky, and if you'd like, you can have a lamp by your bedside table. In the latter half of the 19th century, British innovation brought what we know today as the Industrial Revolution. These advances have led us to our modern day technology: iPhones, internet, Bluetooth, but at what cost? While the Industrial Revolution was indisputably a milestone for human innovation, it has led to the biggest crisis that humanity now faces: climate change. I am an advocate for fighting for climate change in my community, and today I'd like to educate you about how human activity contributes to the rapid change in climate and the direct threat that we face because of it. So, the first thing we need to talk about is the carbon cycle. There's an element called carbon that has been crucial to maintaining life on Earth, beyond just human life, but the lives of millions of species. The Earth is incredible due to its ability to self regulate, and it has an efficient system to distribute carbon throughout the ocean, the ground, the atmosphere. And the Earth was not quite prepared for a species as intelligent and destructive as the human race. And so, if we're talking about climate change, we have to talk about the greenhouse gas effect. So, greenhouse gases are gases that trap heat in the atmosphere. So, when the sun heats up the Earth during the day and then goes away at night, these greenhouse gases are responsible for keeping that heat in the atmosphere so the Earth doesn't get like freezing at night and becomes inhabitable. So we need these gases in the atmosphere to keep us at a good temperature. The issue is when we have too many of these gases in the atmosphere, it heats up the overall global temperature, which has some major effects on typical processes that the Earth goes through. And so the greenhouse gases are carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and then other fluorinated gases. And the activities that contribute to excess amounts of these gases in the air uh, are burning fossil fuels like coal, natural gas, oil. So when you see big factories and you can like see the pollution that's coming from them, that's because they're burning these fossil fuels. In addition, solid waste, especially from cows, contribute excess amounts of these gases in the atmosphere. And modern human culture has exponentially increased the amount of these greenhouse gases. Jared Diamond, a professor at UCLA and a Pulitzer Prize winning author, states, one could say that because the atmosphere is so thin, the activity of 7.7 billion humans can actually make significant changes to the entire system. He added, the composition of Earth's atmosphere has mostly been altered. Half of the increase in atmospheric carbon dioxide concentrations in the last 300 years have occurred since 1980, and one quarter of it since 2000. Methane concentrations have increased 2.5 times since the start of the industrial age, with almost all of that occurring since 1980. So the changes are coming faster and they're becoming more significant. And so this chart here kind of tracks how we've been doing in terms of carbon dioxide concentration. And this is sort of the danger line. Like if we go above this line, the global climate is going to increase. And so for the last 800,000 years, it's been at a fine amount. And then since 2008, you can see that this line is vertical, which means we have been doing some serious damage to the atmosphere. One more factor about this carbon cycle is that the ocean plays a huge role in absorbing carbon dioxide. And when we add too much into the atmosphere and the ocean has to work to absorb it, it can acidify the ocean, which can be detrimental to the creatures living within. So the satisfaction step, what do we need to do to work towards fixing all this? And why haven't we already done it? And that is mostly because of government and industry action. So the industry is most responsible for the emission of greenhouse gases. Uh, Lyndon Cheek, an environmental studies student at the University of Arkansas, points out that although both problems of fossil fuels and the benefits of green energy have been known for decades, our global consumption of energy has only increased, and we continue to get about 80% of our energy from fossil fuels. So the reason that industries have not gone to green sources of energy rather than these pollution sources of energy is because uh, the energy harnessed from the ground, the carbon that has been sitting in the ground, is really dense and it's cheap. And so a lot of these corporations are sort of refusing to go to clean energy because it's more expensive up front and it's just less convenient. But what we need to do as a country to begin with uh, is recognize that other places have converted to clean sources of energy, like Scotland, who have implemented uh, sun panels and windmills. And we need to do things on a smaller action as civilians, like reduce food waste, composting, turning off lights, avoiding flying, taking shorter showers, and walking to work instead of driving, like small things like that. So the problem is, what will happen if we don't change our behavior? And this is where it gets scary. Um, we'll see changes in weather patterns, which would affect things like irrigation, like when crops grow and if they grow. But more directly on humans, we will see natural disasters like floods and hurricanes and droughts more frequently. Uh, the polar ice caps will eventually melt, and this will cause many places to eventually be underwater, like California, Florida, New York, basically the entire East Coast, which will cause displacement because these areas are hugely populated and so will likely lead to conflict. And this will happen globally, not just in America. And there are so many things I could list off, but this is the most important. Uh, if our water becomes too acidic, and oxygen is not transported to the bottom of the ocean, which would happen if we had too much CO2 in the atmosphere, um, something there would be an outbreak in the ocean of anaerobic bacteria, which produces a chemical compound called hydrogen sulfate and is extremely poisonous. So basically, it would kill the entire human race. So my I I beg each person to be conscious of what they're doing on their day to day because like eventually we are not going to make the cut if we keep up this this reckless behavior on a global scale. And so climate change is an issue that occurs gradually enough to be ignored day to day, but don't be fooled, it is an urgent issue. Greenhouse gas emissions have risen exponentially in recent years, causing the global temperature to increase, throwing off the Earth's natural regulatory systems. In order to avoid, or at the very least, delay these catastrophic events from causing mass extinction, we need to start acting right now. And it begins with small things like limiting personal energy consumption to large action, like holding corporations and the government officials accountable for implementing clean energy sources. It is essential that we choose to invest whatever it takes to save our planet, because the truth is, the earth will endure, but the human race will not.